Next, let us unpack the pragmatic and experiential perspectives of Fo Guangshan. For this, I now turn the floor to Venerable Miao Guang. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Jue, and thank you, Dr. Lancaster, for the very insightful and concise introduction of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva's experience. And today, I would also like to share a little bit about my explorations of the Prajñā Paramita based on my experiences at Fo Guangshan and also as the interpreter to our founder, Venerable Master Xing Yun. As you have heard Dr. Lancaster's presentation or description of the story within the sutra, this brings back memories about my first experiences as a Buddhist. When we were young, as we attended the rituals or the ceremonies at the temple, we were always told by the Venerable that by laying prostrations and chanting to the Buddha, we have a chance to connect with the Buddha in the highest form, that is Prajñā. So in those early days, when we asked the question of what is Prajñā or Prajñā Paramita, these are probably the answers that we receive most commonly. That Prajñā is beyond knowledge and wisdom. It is the ultimate freedom, and it gives us the infinite potential. It is our true face and our true thusness and Buddha nature. Certainly, these answers gave me a chance to look up and high about my ultimate goal as a Buddhist. But as I journey down the path of my life as a monastic, whenever I ponder over the meaning of the Dharma during my meditative practices, as well as my study of the sutra, sometimes I tend to feel stuck and lost as to how exactly do I realize these highest and supreme levels of attainment? And later on in my life, Venerable Master Xing Yun shared some more answers to help us dwell deeper into the meaning of Prajñā on all levels. He shared with us that Prajñā is a beacon of light in the sea of Dukkha. So when it is all dark and we are drowning, sometimes a little ray of light will guide us in some kind of direction out of that sea. It is also the teaching of liberation and eternal joy, given that if we ever attain an understanding of Prajñā, right, we're bound to liberate ourselves from the shackles that we create out of a sense of Atman, and that we're closer to eternal joy. We are also told that it is the origin and basis of being a human. So whatever it is we're at on the surface, when we have a chance to regain our calm and quiet, we see that Prajñā within us. So overall, Prajñā, as being told by our teacher, Venerable Master Xing Yun, he shares that it is the core of Buddhism. It is what enables us to live freely, most importantly, with self-mastery in this world. That is Ishvara. And so these two levels of answers to what Prajñā is have set a very solid direction for my practices and my journey as a Dharma propagator. And certainly, it has also been shared that when we look into the reason why Venerable Master Xing Yun has been able to successfully spread Buddhism across the world, especially in the name of Humanistic Buddhism, we see two main reasons. First of all, throughout his 90 years of life, he has always guarded the fundamentals of the Buddhist faith. He never deviated far. And secondly, we all benefited from his amazing ability to creatively apply upaya or skillful means, so that we too learn to enjoy the wonders of Dharma. And so what kind of Prajñā Paramita have I been able to learn from his personal examples as well as his teachings? I see these in two parts. In our journey to acquire Prajñā Paramita, first of all, we must never deviate far from the core teachings, that is the Buddha's fundamental teachings. And secondly, it is key to how we understand these teachings by establishing skillful application of knowledge and mindset. Thirdly, how do we apply Prajna wisdom by living it as a part of our life as we continue to grow as a human being? Last but not least, when we do 1, 2, 3, what is our ultimate goal? That is an attainment of the highest level of awareness that we are all at one with other sentient beings. That is the point where we fully unite with our self-compassion as well as wisdom to really see life from the peak of Prajñā Paramita. So very quickly, what is the core of the Buddha's fundamental teachings? I remember back in the early 2000s when Venerable Master Xing Yun was giving a talk at Foguangshan in front of a crowd of 800. Suddenly, there was an earthquake at about a Richter scale of 4. And shaking at scale 4, basically the auditorium rocked. So people started to panic. Some tried to leave their seat. But immediately at that moment, as Venerable Master was well into his teaching, he closed his eyes, joined his palms, and remained quiet. And as he did that, although the auditorium was still shaking, I could see immediately the rest of the audience also bathing in his own calm. They regained their sense of safety and wellness. And then, as soon as the earthquake stopped, Venerable Master opened his eyes and went right back to the teaching. It was as if nothing ever happened. And so at that moment, what I saw was this wonderful demonstration of Ishvara, deeply rooted in Prajñā Paramita. He presented his true self that was unshakable by the shackles of the external world. And so it was as if I saw a live demonstration of the opening of the Heart Sutra. How do we overcome all ills and suffering? It is by coursing deep in Prajñā Paramita, that realizing whatever it is we experience as a human, they are in essence empty, and there's no need to hold on to them, cling to them, or be deeply affected by them. Therefore, what is the core of the Buddha's fundamental teachings to help us attain Prajna wisdom? I would say it's simply to understand where dukkha comes from, and then we apply that proper cure in order to transcend the suffering. And what are these core teachings? Well, on the left column, you see the very fundamental teachings of the Buddha that gives us a sense of patience or sanctity on 3 levels: ordinary, dharma, and non-arising dharmas. So on the ordinary level, it gives us the strength so that we survive the everyday phenomena of this world. In other words, we have the courage to face the happenings without any desire to change them or to run away from them. And on the second level, Venerable Master Xing Yun's calm demonstrates his transformation of knowledge into wisdom through his day-to-day connection with Prajñā Paramita as well as compassion. So it is our power to sever these afflictions. Last but not least, on the level of Ishvara, since nothing ever really arises or ceases, why be bothered by anything at all? And so at that level, we see that every awareness of peace and freedom, no matter where we are or no matter who we are. So when we are deeply rooted in the core of the fundamental teachings, next is about understanding. And in short, a very interesting upaya or skill as to how we enhance our understanding is by the simple procedure of continuous questioning. In other words, the more you ask, the more you know. These are some of the questions posed by Venerable Master. As we observe the everyday happenings of the universe, he asks, human beings can now land the moon, but can this technology ever bring us to Pure Land? His answer? No. Rebirth in Pure Land is an instant of firm and unshakable belief. Only faith can bring us to Pure Land. So through this question, we find the true root to our faith. Never lose it. And secondly, he says, modern medical science can replace human organs to prolong life, but can they give us eternal life? Therefore, while we celebrate the advancement of human technology and medical science, he again, with this question, pulls us back to the root of Dharma by saying, no, By replacing parts of the conventional body, our physical life will still die. Only by discovering our innate Buddha can life be everlasting. So with that root established in our faith, we now have a clear goal. The third question, does exploring the limits of space lead to freedom from samsara? He says, no. Only Prajñā wisdom can take us beyond the boundaries of birth and death. And so ultimately, he brings us back to the daily applications of our interconnectedness with reality. And so our goal, our root, and our applications are very clear. Now, as we come to the applications, right, how do we apply the Dharma? Again, by simply asking the question, what is the Dharma for? These are his answers. Well, we learn the Dharma to tame our unsettling minds, with the calm and Ishvara demonstrated by the Bodhisattvas in their deep meditative concentration. Secondly, once we have that, it is important for us to inspire our compassion to reach out and help others. Otherwise, our attained wisdom and compassion will simply be in vain. Why be the only one to benefit from that? And so ultimately, when we combine 1 and 2, we learn that the most important thing in our learning of the Dharma is to make sure that we are inspired to take meaningful actions. Remember, the writings in the sutras not only communicate the higher spirit of the Buddha. I believe that an even more important purpose of the languages in the sutra, or the languages of Dharma, is to make sure that we put it into action. Even more, meaningful actions. So through the Buddha's own examples, through the day-to-day routine of the Sangha of Six Reverent Harmony, to our day-to-day refuge-taking, as well as our simple remembrance of any one line that will change our life forever, we are living the Dharma as a way of self-development. And so in these, Venerable Master Xing Yun applies and demonstrates through the later days of his life in his ailing body, when he's confined to a wheelchair, when he has lost 99% of his vision, he never lost his root to the Dharma. Even though he's no longer able to see or read, he says, I can still write the words of Dharma to inspire people. And on this picture, it may seem simple, but you may wonder when someone who has suffered from diabetes for more than 60 years, who cannot see, his hands shake. He has no idea where his brush is landing. These are the words he writes with such calm and composure as his compassionate willingness to share with us that, yes, remember, wherever you are, don't forget about the everywhereness of your inner Buddha and that inner compassion that is displayed through the skillful applications of Prajñā Paramita. I would like to save some of these stories later as my responses to the questions Venerable Joey can lead. But I would like to go right to number 4. Okay. So fourthly, having understood the core, finding a way to understand what Prajñā wisdom is, and experience the different ways to apply it, our ultimate attainment is to realize the oneness and coexistence among all beings. So what do we attain at the end of the day as we experience the presence of Prajñā? First of all, never leave the ultimate teaching of interdependent co-arising, because this gives us a sense of awareness that we are all equal. And as all equal living beings, there's no reason for us to not share unconditional acceptance to people who are different from us, to those who may share different values. And by doing so, we continue to coexist with our fellow human beings and friends in the common presence of compassion and harmony. In other words, as a bodhisattva who progresses down the path of Buddhahood, their greatest realization is that only when all is happy will a bodhisattva's happiness thereby be true. And certainly a couple of methods shared by Venerable Master to realize equality, oneness, coexistence, compassion, and clear insight are through many of his conversations with the people he interacts with. For example, the young Filipino students who come to study at Guangming College, founded by him. Right? He says, I don't know you, but you are part of my family, so I will do everything I can to help you. And in his most well-known visit to the September 11 attack, where he went to give a blessing, he unconditionally shared his prayer as a universal value amongst all religions. He said his prayer to not only Buddha, but also to God, to Allah, to Jesus, to Muhammad, which touched the hearts of all those who were present, those of different racial, cultural, and national backgrounds. He opened their hearts with his sense of compassion and equality. And so at the end of the service, although they had no idea who this Buddhist master was, all they wanted and needed at the end of that session was to walk up to him for a moment of blessing so that everybody too can feel the sense of Ishvara or self-mastery demonstrated by a Buddhist practitioner. So in close, the simple 4 steps to how we understand and apply Prajñā Paramita all comes from a Buddhist master who dedicated his entire life to bringing the words of the sutras and the dharmas to real life. He says, for as long as I'm breathing, as long as I'm alive, I will dedicate every bit of my life, every bit of my energy, every bit of my effort to the benefit of the spiritual growth of all living beings. So, to close, I would like to present to you this 4-part chart of how Venerable Master can help us understand Prajñā Paramita and then actually practice it. Number 1, the core, which is the Buddha's fundamental teachings. Number 2, the only way to understand it is to skillfully apply it, to apply our knowledge and to establish that upaya mindset. And in application, never forget that it is a part of our daily life. And finally, the highest attainment of any bodhisattva is not just prajna, but prajna paired with the compassionate awareness that we are all one. So that is what I have to share. I hope it echoes Dr. Lancaster's insightful sharing of the Prajñā Paramita Sutra. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Miao Guang, for sharing your personal journey of realizing the supreme prajna and sharing also Venerable Master Xing Yun's teachings to live freely and creatively with compassion and wisdom, even in the middle of an earthquake. You see how the bodhisattvas in the Buddhist texts come to life through us having confidence and faith in the inner Buddha that is already in all of us, and our interconnectedness with reality. As many reach out to popular self-help books, let us not forget to also look at the lives of the noble people around us.